All right, shalom, shalom. It's Brother Yatazadak, hero of Israel. I'd like to start off by giving honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Today we're going to go into 2nd Esdras chapter 12. And Lord willing, you're edified. You're going to finish this is the part 2, the 2nd Esdras 11 and 12 breakdown. So we're going to go through the whole chapter. Chapter 11 is already complete, so you can take a look at it. Questions or comments, drop me a line, and let's get right into it. Through the power of the Spirit, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash, double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Right? 2nd Esdras chapter 12 and verse 1. And it reads, And it came to pass, while the lion spake these words unto the eagle, I saw, and behold, the head that remained of the 4 wings appeared no more. And the 2 went in unto it, and set themselves up to reign. And their kingdom was small and full and filled of uproar. Right? So this is after, right, America Babylon the Great gets destroyed. Right? Which is why it says, right, says that the head that remained, right, and the 4 wings appeared no more, and the 2 went into it and set themselves up to reign, and their kingdom was small and full of uproar. Right? Because previously we brought up that you have the right wing, which is the 12 feathers, and the 8 contrary feathers, which is the other wing. Right? The 3 heads, one going into obscurity, right, which represents Russia, right, or Slovakia, the old Soviet Union, right, being turned back, fading away, but then returning as that bear, which is why it's not there. Right? You have the America Babylon the Great, which is the U.S., right, that had being done away with because America Babylon the Great being destroyed. So the only head left is the EU, the European Union. But now this time this is divided Europe once again. Right? So it says the head that remained, and the 4 wings appeared no more. And the 2 went in unto it and set themselves up to reign. Meaning what? This is part of the 4 wings, which is also called the 4 contrary feathers. Right? It appeared no more. Right? The 2 went in unto it and set themselves up to reign, and the kingdom was small and full of uproar. Right? Which is the 4 wings. Right? You have first and foremost the 2 little feathers, which is from 96 to 192 AD, Nerva and the Antoine dynasty. And then you have the fall of the West Roman Empire, which is the other 2 feathers or wings, which is from 455 to 476 AD, right, which is Romulus Augustus. Right? So those are the four wings or 4 feathers that appear no more. Right? Because that was that fall of that old Rome. Right? And it says, and the 2 went in unto it and set themselves up to reign, which is the 2 being what, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, which was the beginning of Jake ruling in the Dark Ages. Right? So they set themselves up to reign, right? But they had a short time. They went unto it, meaning when it says they went unto it, right, and set themselves up to reign, meaning they went into that Rome returning, right? Because it wasn't under Esau's rule, but it was known as the Eastern Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, Jake ruling in the Dark Ages, which ultimately Esau took that old Rome, right, which Jake preserved, and right, which is the six of the eight contrary feathers. Then you have France and England, right, which is the last two, right. So the Eastern Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, that went into the last two feathers, which means, which is why it says the two went in unto it, meaning they were absorbed into Esau's philosophy that he brought back as Rome, right? Through France, through England, which ultimately England set up the America Babylon Great. America Babylon Great absorbed it through the head, which is the EU, which is the head that remained, right? Um, and they set themselves up to reign, which is why it says, right, they set themselves up to reign. So the four wings, the four feathers. Two went in unto it, meaning that those two of the which were the six of the eight, right, went in onto that renewing of Rome, right? Which, if you can understand, let's just give you a visual, right? Block it. Just give you a visual. Right, you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Right, so this is the 12 Caesars, right? That's the old Rome, right? Um, America Babylon Great being destroyed, right? One of the heads fading away, meaning, right, that old Soviet Union being, right, turned back and fading into obscurity, returning as the bear, right? And right, which you read about that in chapter 11, and let's start at 2nd Esdras 11:29. When they so thought, we'll start at 2nd Esdras 11:26. And I beheld, and lo, there was one set up, but shortly after appeared no more. And the second was sooner done away than the first, right? Which is right, you have the Eastern Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. Verse 28, and I beheld, and lo, the two that remained thought themselves to reign, which is the first French Empire established in 1804, right? England, right? Which these empires helped, right, forward America Babylon the Great being established. Verse 29, when they so thought, behold, there awaked one of the heads that were at rest, namely it that was in the midst, for that was greater than the two other heads, which is America Babylon the Great. Right? And then I saw that the two other heads were joined with it, right? Because, right, the Soviet Union was a great superpower. The EU, right, was going to ultimately, which is Europe, unified, is going to join with America Babylon the Great. And behold, the head was turned with them that were with it, did eat up the two feathers, Salakia, and did eat up the two feathers under the wing that would have reigned. Right, which is, right, the two feathers is France and England, right? So basically, right, America Babylon the Great, right, pushed out France from gaining land in America Babylon the Great and England, right? So it ate up the two feathers, right? That's a term Jake uses up. I ate them up, or right, as in right, or I ate up them punches, right? So they took a beating, right? America Babylon the Great, right, gained its independence, right? So it says, but this had put the whole earth in fear, bear rule in it over all those that dwelt upon the earth with much oppression, and it had the governance of the world more than all the wings that had been. And after this I beheld, and lo, the head that was in the midst suddenly appeared no more, like as the wings. The head in the midst is Russia, which is right, which is also the old Soviet Union spirit coming back, right? So it disappeared, right? Suddenly appeared no more because it fell into obscurity, right? When the Soviet Union was dismantled, right? Ezekiel chapter 38. Right? I will put hooks in thy jaw and turn thee back. But now, right, that head disappears and it returns as the bear of Russia, right? Which is also Russia as well. But in this case, right, it falls into obscurity and returns, right, as the bear, as the final head, or Salakia, not as the final head, right, but it's still part of those remaining rulerships, right? Because this is Second Esdras chapter 12, and in verse 21, or Salakia, verse 22, wherein thou sawest three heads resting, this is the interpretation. In his last days shall the Most High raise up three kingdoms, which are the three heads, and renew many things therein. They shall have dominion of the earth, and of those that dwell therein with much oppression, above all those that were before them. Therefore they are called the heads of the eagle, for these are they that shall accomplish his wickedness, that shall finish his last end. Right. So here they're not noted as standing together, but as being set up to accomplish the Lord's will. Right. And whereas thou sawest that the great head appeared no more, it signifieth that one of them shall die upon his bed, and yet with pain. Right? This is talking about America Babylon the Great being destroyed. But the two that remain shall be slain with the sword. Right? World War III Armageddon. Right? For the sword of the one shall devour the other, but the last shall fall through the sword himself. The last one is Russia, because that's going to be, right, the last great stand of Esau. Right? Because he's gonna, right, have that evil thought to come up against America Babylon the Great, right along with the European Union. But they're ultimately Satan is gonna be divided against Satan. They're gonna fight each other, right? And they're gonna fall through their own sword. The last one, not necessarily Russia, last will perish last, because all the armies of the earth are gonna go to Yahushai, and the elect and the remnant that descend back down is at New Jerusalem in the Holy Land, right, to fight it in the Valley of Decision, right? But this just represents Esau's last stand, right? Him falling to the sword himself, meaning they're going to perish by their own weapons, not necessarily in that order, right? Because the whole earth will see the return of Yahushai, the elect being delivered, right? America, Babylon the Great being destroyed, right? Verse 29, 2 Esdras 12 and 29, whereas thou sawest two feathers under the wings passing over the head, that is on the right side, it signifies that these are they whom the highest hath kept unto their end. This is a small kingdom and full of trouble, as thou sawest, which is what you read in verse 2, chapter 12, because this is the final head, right, which in this case, right, in verse 2, it's talking about the EU, right? And that's what it's talking about here in verse 29, which says the two feathers passing over the head, right? That's talking about the EU, right? Because at this point, America, Babylon the Great's done away with, the old Rome is done away with, that that other head falls into obscurity, returns back as a bear. So now you have the EU, right? This is what's left of the eagle, the head and the two feathers, right? Because two of those feathers, right, is the fall of the two feathers is Nerva in the Antoine dynasty from 96 to 192 AD, right? That's two of them. Two of the other feathers, right, is the fall of the Western Roman Empire, right? 455, 476 AD, Romulus Augustus. So you have two left. That's two, two. So this is what you have left here. That's 2, 4, and then you have 4 more left on in this side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? So let's just give you a little more updated look. So this is what you have left, ultimately. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's Esau's last stand, right? So two of those feathers, we went over 2 and 2, right? And then you have the other two, which makes 6. That's the Eastern Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire. This represents Jake, right? Coming into power in Rome. The Moors ruling. Then you have the other two, which is the First French Empire, England, right? How America, Babylon the Great was established. And the EU, right? Which this ultimately is what's going to be left, right? In the latter days, which as a whole, right, it represents that small kingdom full of uproar, Esau's last stand. All this ultimately together is divided Europe. Europe divided, right? And that bear, right, which is part of those 3 heads, the 2 heads that remain, right? If you can get what I'm saying, right? So this is the bear. That's what's left of Esau's reign, right? The bear and the small kingdom, the head and the 2 feathers, which is ultimately just, it's divided Europe, right? But anyways, right? So 2nd Esdras chapter 12, verse 2, and behold, the head that remained of the 4 wings appeared no more, and the 2 went in unto it, and set themselves up to reign. And their kingdom was small and full of uproar, and I saw and behold, they appeared no more, and the whole body of the eagle was burnt, so that the earth was in great fear. Then awaked I out of trouble, and trance of my mind from great fear, and said unto my spirit, right? So the whole body of the eagle being burnt is the Lord bringing fire to the earth, thermonuclear fire, right? Via Armageddon, World War III, the Valley Decision, the armies of the earth being disintegrated, right? Which includes the head, the last head, and the 2 feathers, which is divided Europe, and the bear, all of it, right? But here it's just talking about the divided Europe, right? Slovakia, divided Europe, right? And So that eagle being done away with, right? Verse 4, lo, this thou hast done unto me, and thou searchest out the way of the highest. Verse 5, lo, yet I am weary in my mind, and very weak in my spirit. Little strength is there in me, for the great fear wherewith I was afflicted this night. Verse 6, therefore will I now beseech the highest that he will comfort me unto the end. And I said, Lord, that bearest rule, if I have found grace before thy sight, and if I am justified with thee before many others, and if my prayer indeed be come up before thy face, comfort me then, and shew thy servant the interpretation and plain difference of this fearful vision, that thou mayest perfectly comfort my soul. For thou hast judged me worthy to shew me the last times. And he said unto me, this is the interpretation of the vision. The eagle whom thou sawest come up from the sea is the kingdom which was seen in the vision of thy brother Daniel, which is the fourth beast. But it was not expounded unto him. Therefore now I declare it unto thee. Verse 13, behold, the days will come that there shall rise up a kingdom upon earth, and it shall be feared above all the kingdoms that were before it. Right? Which is America, Babylon the Great. In the same shall 12 kings reign, one after the other. Right? The kingdom that was, that was and is, which is ancient Rome, which is America, Babylon the Great. Rome revitalized. Right? In the same shall 12 kings reign, one after the other, the 12 Roman Caesars, right? The 12 feathers, right, on the right-hand side, whereof the second shall begin to reign and shall have more time than any of the 12, right? We went over that in the previous chapter. And this do the 12 wings signify which thou sawest. As for the voice which thou heardest speak, that thou shouldest not go out from the head, that thou sawest not to go out from the heads, but from the midst of the body thereof, this is the interpretation, right? Which is that voice going for the midst of the body, right? It's that old serpent, the spiritual demon Satan, assisting Esau in the background. Technology with his ability to create these destroying weapons, right? The ability to splice DNA and whatnot, right? Which was given to Esau on the left-hand side in order to forward his wickedness, right, upon the earth, right? Verse 18, that after that time of that kingdom there shall rise great strivings, and it shall stand in peril of failing. Nevertheless, it shall not then fall, but shall be restored again to its beginning, which are the 8 contrary feathers, right? You had what? The 2 little feathers, right? Nerva, the Antoine dynasty, 96 to 192 AD. You had the fall of the Western Roman Empire, 455 to 476 AD, Romulus Augustus. Then you had the coming of the Middle Ages, right? Which is the Eastern Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, the Moors, right? Which is Jake ruling, right, in the Dark Ages. Which the Eastern Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire, that's 6 of 8 feathers. The other 2 is France and England, right? Because it says 2 Esdras 11 and 28, right? The 2 that remain thought in themselves also to reign, right? And then the America, Babylon the Great coming out of those kingdoms, right? England and France and whatnot, right? 2 Esdras chapter 12, right? Which is why it says great strivings, right? Standing in peril of falling, right? And that old Rome eventually did fall. But Esau kept those philosophies, kept that mindset, right? The paganistic ways, and has continued it in its written code of law. Continued that right old Rome mindset as far as right the architecture, the days of the week, the months, right? That old that old spirit of Rome, right, being restored again, right, to its beginning, right. So it did fall, but didn't actually fall, right. If you can understand what I'm saying, right. And even now, right, America, Babylon the Great is in high debt, inflation, right, the dollar crashing, right. It's in peril of falling once again, right. But it's not going to fall until the Lord says so, right. So this is talking about old Rome and new Rome, right. And you can look at the historical counts, right. For example, right, you have the crisis of the third century, right. Um, right, you have what's called the um, let's look that up. Slovakia, crisis of the third century, which is good to go into certain of these things, right? Just to give the context. Crisis of the third century. It says the crisis of the third century, also known as the military anarchy or the imperial crisis, was a period in which the Roman Empire nearly collapsed. The crisis ended due to the military victories of Aurelian and with the ascension of Diocletian and his implementation of reforms in 284. Right, which is right, which is Rome almost falling, basically, right? Like I said in the precept, right? So it says the crisis began in 235 with the assassination of Emperor Severus Alexander by his own troops. All right, so that happened in 235 AD. Right, Severus Alexander, right? So this was during the time when Esau was losing grip, right? Jake was coming into power, right? You can look into that, research it yourself, right? So let's see. So it says during the following 50-year period, the empire saw the combined pressures of barbarian invasions and migrations into Roman territory, civil wars, peasant rebellions, and political instability, multiple usurpers competing for power. Right? So it says crisis ends with the ascension of the Diocletian, right? Which it says so this started the implementation of reforms, right? And whatnot, right? So the Roman Empire being restructured. So it was a period of transition between classical antiquity and late antiquity, right? Right, so you can look into that, right? So it says, nevertheless, it shall not then fall, but shall be restored again to his beginning, right? So great strivings, right? Standing in prayer of falling, right? And it actually did fall, but then it came back as that new Rome. Nevertheless, it shall not then fall, but shall be restored again to its beginning, right? Which is the deadly wound, right? That fourth beast being revived. And whereas thou sawest 8 small under feathers sticking to her wings, this is the interpretation, that in him there shall rise 8 kings, whose time shall be but small, and their years swift. Right? We went over that, which is not necessarily 8 individual rulers. It's talking about various time periods, right? Which we went over them already, right? And their years swift. And 2 of them shall perish, the middle time approaching. 4 shall be kept until their end to reproach, but the 2 shall be kept unto the end, right? Which is what? What is it? Let's see what we got right here. We got right, which is 2 of them perishing is what? The 2 little feathers. It's Nerva, the Antoine dynasty. Right, let's just get into a little bit of information on that since I didn't do it in the previous video. Right, so let's look up Nerva Antoine dynasty. Right, so these aren't specific individual rulers or Caesars or emperors, right? Which an emperor is a Caesar, right? This is talking about different periods of time, so it's not necessarily 8 kings, right? It says the Nerva Antoine dynasty comprised 7 Roman emperors who ruled from 96 to 192 AD. So this is just 2 of the contrary feathers. You have Nerva 96 to 98 AD. You have Trajan, Hadrian, Antonius Pius, Marcus Aurelius, Lucius Verus, and Commodius. First 5 of these are commonly known as the 5 good emperors, right? Which these were Jakes, right? Which right, Esau was losing grip, right? And Jake was coming into power, right? So after this time, right, was the approaching of the Middle Ages, right? The Dark Ages, right? Because eventually that old Rome of antiquity fell at the fall of the Western Roman Empire, right? Which is why it says here, 2 of them shall perish, right? Which is Nerva, the Antoine dynasty, the 5 good emperors. The middle times approaching is the fall of the Western Roman Empire, right? Which is 455 to 476 AD during the reign of Romulus Augustus, right? So we're going to go into that as well. That's 2 of the other contrary feathers. That's 4, right? Then you have, right, the Eastern Roman Empire, the Holy Roman Empire, right, which is the Dark Ages. And then you have, that's 2 more contrary feathers, and then you have the last 2, which is France and England, right? So it says the first of the 5-6 successions within this dynasty were notable in that the reigning emperor did not have a male heir and had to adopt a candidate of his choice to be his successor. Under Roman law, an adoption established a bond legally as strong as of kinship. Because of this, all but the first and last of the Nerva Antoine emperors are called adoptive emperors. So it says it was common for patrician families to adopt. Roman emperors have adopted heirs in the past. The Emperor Augustus had adopted Tiberius, right? So this was done in the past, so it wasn't a new practice, right? In this era of the Nerva Antoine dynasty, right? Let's see. Now let's look at the fall of the Western Roman Empire. It says the fall of the Western Roman Empire, also called the fall of the Roman Empire or the fall of Rome, was the loss of central political control in the Western Roman Empire, a process in which the empire failed to enforce its rule and its vast territory was divided into several successor polieties, which is a political entity, right? The Roman Empire lost the strength that had allowed it to exercise effective control over its western provinces, right? Which is the other two contrary feathers, right? Which is why it says in chapter 12 and Second Esdras chapter 12, verse 19, verse 18, that there would be great strivings, stand in peril of falling. So part of Rome fell, but Rome as a whole didn't fall, because then you had the establishment of what? The Eastern Roman Empire. Another entity of Rome, but that old Rome fell, right? As Jake came into power, the Holy Roman Empire, right? Because during that old Rome, there was a lot of persecution against Christians, right? But then, right through Jake, the Rome, which is the Eastern Roman Empire, Holy Roman Empire, became Christianized. So they were no longer a minority, but a majority in a sense, as far as politics was concerned, right? So it says the Roman Empire lost the strengths that allowed it to exercise effective control over its western provinces. Modern historians posit factors including the effectiveness of numbers of the army, the health and numbers of the Roman population, the strength of the economy, the competence of the emperors, the internal struggles for power, the religious changes of the period, and the efficiency of the civil administration. Increasing pressure from invading barbarians outside Roman culture also contributed greatly to the collapse. Climatic changes and both endemic and epidemic disease drove many of these immediate factors, which is happening with the Crown Royale 19, right? All these are factors, right? Just Esau being divided, right? Struggles for power, right? Which is happening in the latter days as well, right? Satan be divided against Satan, he shall not stand, right? Which is why it says in chapter 12, right? Second Edges 12 and 17 and on down, right? That voice that right didn't come out from the heads, but from the midst of the body, right? Which is the spiritual demon Satan, because he caused that division back then and now, right? That's through the Lord. The Lord is making these things happen because it is the Lord's movie, right? The Lord had already spoke it, so it has to fall into its proper place of prophecy, right? Right. So due to outside invaders and whatnot. Um, so basically, Esau needed Jake, right? But then Jake took over, right? Now let's look at Romulus Augustus. Slovakia. It says Romulus Augustus, nicknamed Augustulus, was Roman Emperor of the West from 31st October 475 to 476. Right? We're going to look at how that fell. So it says Romulus Augustus, nicknamed Augustulus, was a Roman emperor of the West from 31st October 475, September 4, 476. Right? Romulus was placed on the imperial throne by his father, the Magister Militum Orestes, and at that time still a minor, was little more than a figurehead for his father. After Romulus ruled for just 10 months, the barbarian general Odoacer defeated and killed Orestes and deposed Romulus, right? The barbarian invaders, right? Which is how that old Rome fell, right? Or a entity of Rome, right? As Odoacer did not proclaim any successor, Romulus is typically regarded as the last Western Roman emperor, his deposition making the end of the Western Roman Empire as a political entity, despite the fact that Julius Nepos would continue to be recognized as the Western emperor by the East. Right? The deposition of Romulus Augustus is also sometimes used by historians to mark the transition from antiquity to the medieval period. Right? Um, so it says, let's just go back to the Eastern Western Roman Empire. Let's click on this. Right, so you have let's just type in rise of the Eastern Roman Empire. Right, which is also known as the Byzantine Empire. Right, the beginnings of the Byzantine Empire lie in the decision of Roman Emperor Constantine to relocate the capital of the Roman Empire from Rome to Byzantium on the 11th of May 330. Right, so this is one of the feathers, right? Says the strength of the Eastern Empire served to divert barbarian invasions to the west. Emperors like Constantine ensured that the city of Constantinople was fortified and well guarded, but Italy and the city of Rome, which only had symbolic value for many in the east, were left vulnerable. Right? right? So that is Slovakia. So we won over 4 of the contrary feathers, right? And you have, right, the 5th being the Eastern Roman Empire, right? Because 2 of those feathers was Nerva, the Antoine dynasty. 2 of the other contrary feathers was Romulus Augustus in his reign, which was very short, which is why it says in chapter 12, and Second Esdras 12 and 20, that in him there shall rise 8 kings whose time shall be but small and their years swift. Right? Then you have the Eastern Roman Empire, right? Which is the 5th contrary feather, right? This is during the time of what the Middle Ages, which is approaching, right? Like it says in verse 21, 2 Esdras 12 and 21, 2 of them shall perish, the middle time approaching, right? The Eastern Roman Empire and the Holy Roman Empire. Right? But the 2 shall be kept unto the end is what France and England, which is the last 2. Right? So you have the 5th, right, being the Eastern Roman Empire, the 6th being the Holy Roman Empire, the Middle Ages, which those 2 compromise, right? Jake coming into power. The 7th and the 8th is France and Rome, right? In which America, Babylon the Great came out from that, right? So you have the western entity of Rome fell by the barbarians, and the Byzantine Empire arose, right? It says Byzantine Empire, the eastern half of the Roman Empire, which survived for 1,000 years after the western half had crumbled into various feudal kingdoms, which finally fell to Ottoman Turkish onslaughts in 1453, right? Which those were Arabs and right Edomites, right? Um, and basically, right, it was after that Esau rose into power, right, during his Renaissance, right? So let's look up Holy Roman Empire. It says the Holy Roman Empire was a political entity in Western, Central, and Southern Europe that developed in the early Middle Ages and continued until its dissolution in 1806 during the Napoleonic Wars, right? So that is the 6th feather, right? The 7th, right? Because it fell in 1806 during the Napoleonic Wars, right? Let's look at that, right? Part of the French Revolutionary and Napoleonic Wars, right? Which brings us to the 7th feather, right? Says the Napoleonic Wars were a series of conflicts fought between the First French Empire under Napoleon and a fluctuating array of European coalitions. The wars originated in political forces arising from the French Revolution and from the French Revolutionary War, the War of the First Coalition, the War of the Second Coalition, and produced a period of French dominion of continental Europe. Right, there were 7 Napoleonic Wars, five named after the coalitions that fought Napoleon, plus 2 named their prospective theaters, right? Um, so it says, upon realizing the coup of 18 Brumaire, whereby he became the first consul of France in 1799, Napoleon assumed control of the politically chaotic French First Republic. He then organized a financially stable French state with a strong bureaucracy and a professional army. War broke about soon after, with Britain declaring war on France on 18th of May 1803, ending the Peace of Amiens. Right, so during this time, France, Britain were clashing. Right, they sought to have that rule, but it was very short. Right, says Frank McLean argues that Britain went to war in 1803 at a mixture of economic motives and national neurosis, and irrational anxiety about Napoleon's motives and intentions. The British fleet under Admiral Nelson decisively crushed the joint Franco-Spanish Navy in the Battle of Trafalgar in October 1805. This victory secured British control of the seas and prevented a planned invasion of Britain. Right? In December 1805, Napoleon defeated the allied Russo-Austrian army of Austerlitz, effectively ending the Third Coalition and forcing Austria to make peace. Yada yada yada. Let's read on down. Right. Right. So this is kind of fast forwarding after the Renaissance. Right. So in that time, right, the Eastern Roman Empire, right, the Holy Roman Empire succeeded it. Then it fell, right, by the Ottoman Turks, right. And during that time, right, shortly after Esau came into power, right, and then you have, right, the French and Britain coming into play, fighting for power. Let's look that up real quick. Right. How did the Renaissance era start? So it says the Renaissance started in Florence, Italy, a place with a rich cultural history where wealthy citizens could afford to support budding artists. Members of the powerful Medici family, which ruled Florence for more than 60 years, were famous backers of the movement. The Renaissance began in Italy, the birthplace of the Roman Empire, following the fall of the empire in the 4th century. In the subsequent Dark Ages, and the incredible art and ideas of Roman times were temporarily lost. They were later rediscovered in Italy around the 12th century, leading to the Renaissance. Right? So that started in Italy, right? Esau, right, getting the images back, painting over it, Jake's image, right? And you see that the Roman Empire fell in the 4th century, right? Let's see. So let's just go back. Slovakia. So there's history to go into this, right? But Again, I'm trying to make this as comprehensive as possible. Right? So the Holy Roman Empire from 962 to 1806. Right? Which essentially was Jake, which was really around 500 to 1500. Right? Dark Ages. Right? Byzantine Empire. Right? Right? The fall of Rome. Slovakia. Click back too far. Slovakia. Let's just go back to where we were at. Right? Actually, right? So you have the Holy Roman Empire, right? Slovakia. Right? So you can read up on this if you want. Right? But the point is, right? All these things we're showing you receipts. Right? These are the last of the two contrary feathers, right? Which is basically, this represents divided Europe, right? You can look that up, Napoleonic Wars, right? Let's see. Right, you can read that on your own, right? Going back to the breakdown. I believe we were on verse 30. Whereas thou sawest Slovakia, right? Two of them shall perish, the middle time approaching. Four shall be kept until the end begin to approach, but two shall be kept unto the end. Where thou sawest three heads resting, this is the interpretation. In his last days shall the Most High raise up three kingdoms, renew many things therein. They shall have the dominion of the earth, right? That's the three heads. We went over that. And of those that dwell therein, which much oppression above all those that were before them, therefore they are called the heads of the eagle. Slovakia. Verse 25, these are they that shall accomplish his wickedness, and that shall finish his last end. And whereas thou sawest the grey head appear no more, it signifieth that one of them shall die upon his bed, and yet with pain. That's America, Babylon Great. For the two that remain shall be slain with the sword. Right, that's the bear and NATO and EU. Right, which is ultimately World War III. For the sword of one shall devour the other, but at the last shall he fall through the sword himself. Verse 29, and whereas thou sawest two feathers under the wings passing over the head, that is on the right side, that is the last of the two contrary feathers, which is ultimately part of, right, NATO and EU, which is divided Europe, which is Satan divided against himself, right, against the bear, against each other. Is it Salakia? 2 Esdras 12 and 30. It signifieth that these are they whom the highest hath kept unto their end. This is a small kingdom and full of trouble, as thou sawest. Right? So when America, Babylon the Great gets destroyed, right, the other nations are going to bewail that great whore, which is burnt up. Right? The small kingdom and full of trouble, which is these other, right, places that remain after America, Babylon the Great is destroyed, right? Europe being divided, right? Esau ultimately being divided against himself. Verse 31, and the lion whom thou sawest rising up out of the wood and roaring and speaking to the eagle, rebuking her for her unrighteousness with all the words which thou hast heard. Verse 32, this is the anointed whom the highest hath kept from them and for their wickedness unto the end. He shall reprove them and shall upbraid them with their cruelty, right? Which is through the book, right? We're reproving Esau, bringing out receipts, condemning him, condemning the other nations, 2/3 of our people, right? And that's through the word, which is Yahushai, which is why the scriptures say what? That the Lord has placed a sharp sword, right? Double-sided edged sword, like it says in the book of Hebrews, right? Dividing even to the inwards, dividing asunder, right? Which is the word of the word which is light, which is Yahushai, which is, right, it comes in a volume of the book, right? Which is why it says in the book of Revelation, right, he has been given a sharp sword, right? You read about that in Isaiah chapter 49. Let's get that real quick. So as we're raising up the tribes of Jacob, we're throwing down Esau, right? As stated in the book of Genesis, right? That he shall, right, cast thee down, and in the end thou shalt cast him down. Something to that extent. Right? Which is something I'm gonna bring up at camp, right? So it's simple, right? You don't want to go into right? It's good to go into the breakdowns to bring out secular history, but sometimes you got to make it as comprehensive as possible to Jake. Salakia. This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 49, and verse 1. Salakia, listen, O isles, unto me, and hearken, ye people from far. The isles are the heathen, right? The people are the Israelites, which are scattered. The Lord hath called me from the womb, from the bowels of my mother hath he made mention of my name, right? Which is Hamashiach Yahushai, but it's also talking about the remnant that have received this word and are out preaching on highways and byways. And he had made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand hath he hid me, and made me a pilot's shaft. In his quiver hath he hid me. Right, again, it's talking about Yahushai, but it's talking about the remnant as well. Right, those that will be out, right, pushing that mindset, right, the spirit of prophecy, right, which is, right, the Holy Spirit, which is, right, the Lord's counsel being proclaimed. Right? And he said on verse 3, and he said unto me, thou art my servant, O Israel, in whom I will be glorified, right? Which is the remnant, Then I said, I have labored in vain, I have spent my strength for naught, and in vain, yet surely my judgment is with the Lord, and my work with my God. Right? Because it's about works, right? Faith without works is dead, right? Verse 5, and now saith the Lord that formed me from the womb to be a servant, to bring Jacob again unto him, though Israel be not gathered, yet shall I be glorious in the eyes of the Lord, my God shall be my strength. Verse 6, and he said, it is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to restore the preserved of Israel. I will also give thee for a light unto the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth. Right? Thus saith the Lord, the Redeemer of Israel, which is Yahweh, and his Holy One, Yahweh Shai, and his Holy One, to whom man despiseth, to whom the nation abhorreth, to a servant of rulers. Kings shall see and arise, princes also shall worship, because of the Lord that is faithful, and the Holy One of Israel. And he shall choose thee. Right? Let's get that in the book of Revelation. This is Revelation 19:10. Through the power of Spirit of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, Bashem Kakwadash. And I fell at his feet to worship him, and he said unto me, see thou do it not. I am thy fellow servant and of thy brethren that have the testimony of Yahushai. Worship God. For the testimony of Yahushai is the spirit of prophecy. Verse 11, and I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness does he judge and make war. Here's a point. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed with a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of God. Verse 15, and out of his mouth goeth a sharp sword, that with he should smite the nations, and he shall rule them with a rod of iron. He treadeth the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty God. Right? That sharp sword, right? Which is given to Yahushai, right? But it's given unto us first to proclaim his return. And he's going to do the destroying, right? Just like in the book of Exodus, right? You have, right, a Passover being kept, which was a preparation for deliverance. And then you had the destroyer, right? So in a sense, Yahushai is that great destroyer, which is in the Hebrew is Mashachiath, which is the root is Shachath, meaning to destroy, right? Or Machath, which is essentially means the same thing. So that's what's coming, the destroyer, right? We have the sharp sword, but it's right, figurative for the word, right, and the judgments going forth, right. So we're reproving, right, our people and right the works of the wicked. Right, verse 33, for he shall set them before him alive in judgment, and shall rebuke them and correct them. Verse 34, for the rest of my people shall he deliver with mercy, those that have been pressed upon my borders. He shall make them joyful unto the coming of the day of judgment, whereof I have spoken unto thee from the beginning. Verse 35, this is a dream that thou sawest, and these are the interpretations. Right? So the scriptures say that what? The books are being opened, right? Because Esau's still here, the nations are still here, right? Setting them alive in judgment. They're hearing it, right? By the report of the servants of Yahweh Bashem Yahushai, right? Rebuking, correcting them, right? Showing receipts. The rest of my people is the elect, right? Making us joyful, right? And we say Tawada Yahweh Bashem Yahushai for letting us know this truth, receiving the understanding, because not all are going to get it. Many are called, few are chosen. right? Verse 35, this is a dream that thou sawest, and these are the interpretations. Thou only hast been meet to know this secret of the highest. Therefore write all these things that thou hast seen in a book, and hide them, and teach them to the wise of the people, whose hearts thou knowest may comprehend and keep these secrets. So it's no longer a secret, right? Because the seal is being loosed, Yahweh Shai, right? Letting that understanding to go out, right? But wait thou here thyself yet 7 days more, that it may be shew thee whatsoever pleaseth the highest to declare unto thee. And with that he went his way, right? Um, right, so that's pretty much it for that. The rest of it is just self-explanatory, right? So with that, the second Esdras chapter 12, going into the right. This is a part two for completing the chapter 11 breakdown, right? So you can watch this as well as the previous breakdown, just to kind of piece together the pieces of the puzzle, right? So Lord, when you're ratified, it's Brother Tazadaki Hero Israel. And as always, giving all honor and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Makak Kodash. Double honors to the elders and apostles of Great Millstone. Kwame Yasha Allah, Abad Babal, and Shalom.